Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Steyn.
Yes, America's anchorman is away, and by executive order, he has decreed that an undocumented anchorman shall be permitted to sit behind the golden EIB microphone. This is Mark Steyn coming to you live from the far north country of northern New Hampshire. Just snuck in this morning under the first piece in the Keystone Pipeline. It was really easy. Nobody spotted me. Nobody noticed a thing. All too easy. They're all too preoccupied putting the first bricks on the southern border wall. Movement, energy in the executive, as Hamilton said. And it's like, I love the way everyone's, Trump is making a terrible mistake, doubling down on these preposterous allegations of millions and millions of people committing voter fraud. Well, he's apparently going to issue some executive order on this. And I don't actually know what he's going to do. But I will say, I said on this show in November that America has the most disputed elections in the world, in part because it has the most unclean elections not in the world, but in the developed world. Let's put it that way. That we live in an absurd situation now where you need a piece of ID to board a plane. You need a piece of ID to go into certain corporate buildings. You need to show a piece of ID if you check into an hotel. I dropped a visitor coming to see me on my TV show, dropped her off at the hotel in bucolic, rural Vermont, and the hotel clerk asked for a piece of ID to verify that the person claiming to be checking in was in fact the same person who had made the reservation. So to stay in some like a little bed and breakfast in Vermont, you need to show ID, you need everything for ID, but no, asking for ID for elections is racist. So as a result, we don't know who votes, don't know how many people vote. When they did the little thing in Michigan, the attempted recount, they gave it up because they just kept uncovering, like in whatever it is, Wayne County around Detroit, where there are no Republicans, it's all Democrats. They just kept uncovering great elements of Democrat voter fraud. He's serious about this. I don't know what the solution is, but I personally would be very interested to know what the level of voter fraud in the United States is, and I would actually be interested in reducing it. Because one of the problem, most of the voter fraud actually, oddly enough, seems to occur in Democrat-controlled counties. So I'd like to know what it is. Just call me curious about it. It's not a big priority. All these people lecturing Trump, saying, he's getting off message here. He's getting off message here. I saw the guy live in Burlington, Vermont, a year ago at the Flynn Theater. Best night I ever had at the Flynn. They were selling tickets for Trump Prov, an improv night of improv comedy about Trump. Outside the theater, the anti-Trump protesters. You could go to a Vermont comedy club and see improv comedy about Trump. I didn't buy a ticket because I know that Trump is funnier than any of the improv Trump guys are. And the guy, somehow, he's completely, he goes up on stage and he talks about everything. So, like, he'll be talking about the Iranian nuclear program and he'll segue into how Macy's stock has tanked since they stopped selling Trump ties. And under the traditional rules of politics, that's bad because you're off message, because there's no point talking about how Macy's stock has tanked since they stopped telling Trump ties. And yet, for all that, everybody got the message. No, he didn't stay on message, but everybody listening to him somehow gets the message. They know what he's going to do about illegal immigration. They know what he thinks about ISIS. They know it. Somehow they all manage to get the message, even as he just wanders totally off message. That's a brilliant way of communicating if you can do it. I spoke on my show, TV show, the Mark Steyn Show. They gave it that name in case I forget what it's called. The Mark Steyn Show. I spoke to the best-selling novelist Lionel Shriver, and she's a lady, despite being called Lionel, and she's not a conservative at all. She's basically a libertarian. But she didn't care for Trump because, as a writer, she didn't like the way he spoke. All this sad, sad exclamation mark, or Hillary's numbers are horrible, it's pathetic. It's actually he found a brilliant way of communicating that seemed authentic. And what was interesting to me at the inauguration, which is incredibly just 6 days ago, because it seems like a lot has happened since then. It seems an awful lot longer than 6 days since that helicopter with Mr. and Mrs. Obama took off and flew out of Washington. What was interesting to me at the inaugural was whether he'd give a conventional inaugural address. And he didn't. He gave a Trump speech, all business, and the crowd said, the media said, oh, it's dark, it's negative. It's full of these phrases, as Hugh Hewitt mentioned, like American carnage. What it didn't have is any of that so-called sunny, optimistic thing. You know, all that rubbish, let us measure ourselves not by the depths of our despair, but by the soaring heights of our dream, borne ever upward on gaseous clouds of hollow, meaningless, fluffy rhetoric that dissolves on contact with reality and is instantly forgotten. And we've all heard inauguration. I'm being bipartisan here. There's enough bipartisan blame to go round on that kind of American speechifying. And it's garbage. It's not even good rhetoric. It's not Lincoln. It's not Churchill. It's just meaningless bilge. And it doesn't connect with people's lives. It doesn't connect with people's lives. And he's doing it differently. And that's what the media don't get. It's like watching a bunch of tennis correspondents who are suddenly asked to cover a football game. And they have absolutely no idea that the rules they're applying to what they're seeing no longer apply to this guy. And I'll give you an example of this. Mike, have we got this soundbite from this ABC interview? Yeah, this was the ABC interview last night, where the slimy, devious little creep from ABC. What's his name? The slimy, devious little creep. What's he called? Muir. He's doing that thing where he wants to know, can you hear the voices from the Women's March here in Washington? Because this is the voice of the people, according to David Muir. Can you hear the people singing the songs of angry women parts? And that's Ashley Judd. Can you hear it? Actually, they could hear Ashley Judd in Bermuda. That's how much they could hear her. But, so can you hear the voice of the people? The voice of the George Soros-funded people is they're dressed as vaginas in the street. It's the March of the Vaginas. Can you hear the vaginas singing the songs of angry women? And David Muir wants to know, can you hear the people sing when you're all insulated in the Oval Office? And look at the way Trump sticks it back to him. Listen to this.
Could you hear them from the White House?
No, I couldn't hear them. But the crowds were large. But you're going to have a large crowd on Friday, too, which is mostly pro-life people. You're going to have a lot of people coming on Friday. And I will say this, and I didn't realize this, but I was told, you will have a very large crowd of people. I don't know, as large or larger. Some people say it's going to be larger. Pro-life people. And they say the press doesn't cover them.
I don't want to compare crowd sizes
No,
again.
you shouldn't. But let me just say, what they do say is that the press doesn't cover them.
Isn't that great? He takes David Muir's question and he just says, up yours. And that is spectacular, because it gets to the heart of what the media here. Associated Press had a headline on a story. They said, the first question, Trump's first question at the White House press office briefing is pro-Trump. First question at White House press office briefing, pro-Trump. Oh, really? You do surprise me. That was the Associated Press headline. Did they ever, for 8 years, run a headline every other day saying, first question at Obama press briefing is pro-Obama? Because the first question's pro-Obama, the second question's pro-Obama, the third question's pro-Obama, and you can go right down the line. But somehow, the fact that the first question at a pro-Trump briefing, at a Trump press briefing is pro-Trump is news. No, what David Muir is saying is there are people who matter. There are people who matter. And if you're these downtrodden vaginas in the street, all marching wall to wall vaginas everywhere, then you matter. But if you're a pro-life woman, you're actually not wearing a vagina on your head. You're just dressed in a nice tweed suit with safe, respectable clothing. You don't count. And David Muir doesn't get it, because that's actually why they lost the election. The Democrats massively overplayed the dead white male hand. And they basically said to people, they basically reached a strategic decision that a section of their voter base in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania didn't matter. And they had people, and that's fine if you do it in a smoke-filled room somewhere, and you say, we're writing off these losers, no one mention it. But instead, they did mention it. They went out on the airwaves and they put down, they said, everybody, you can be the smallest, least discernible demographic group in the world. Like, you know, the LGBT thing? Like, okay, lesbian, gay, yeah, there's you run into the odd lesbian now again, you run into a gay guy again. B, you run into the bi guys occasionally, swing both ways. T, what's T? Trans? Oh, yeah, the trans. You mean, yeah, Caitlyn Jenner thing. Q, questioning. Q, what? Questioning? That's a constituency now, is it? And then it goes off after that, LGBT QWERTY, and nobody hasn't any clue what the QWERTY stands for. They're the least detectable demographic groups on the planet. Nobody knows who they are. Nobody's met, I've met an LGB, I think I met a T, but I've never met anybody from the QWERTYs. And nobody knows who they are, and yet they're more important than you. You dead white male in Rust Belt country, you dead white male in Michigan, in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and all the rest of it, you don't matter, and the smallest, least demographically significant identity group on the planet matters more than you losers do. And that's why the Democrats lost. That's why the Democrats lost. And David Muir, this big guy, big ABC News guy, he thinks he's gonna sucker Trump into confessing that he hears the voice of the people, that when he sees vaginas marching in the street, he hears the voice of the people. He hears the voice of angry women. He hears women saying, women, I am woman, hear me roar. And he wants Trump to admit that he that he hears the women roar through the walls of the White House, that he's quaking. As Ashley Judd says, oh, I feel Hitler in these streets, his mustache transformed into a toupee. When he hears Ashley Judd saying that, he's quaking under the desk in the Oval Office, or he wants him to say, no, I didn't hear that. I was watching a Rosie O'Donnell rerun and thinking how lousy her ratings are. So and instead Trump does neither of those things. He says, listen, there's going to be another march on Friday. How come you guys don't cover that? How come you guys don't cover that? And that's it. The rules are different. He's not playing by your rules. And he didn't play by the rules, Republican, Democrat, didn't play by Hillary Clinton's rules, didn't play by Karl Rove's rules, and he found a way to win. And the question for the media, who've got everything wrong these last 18 months, is, are you going to get everything wrong for the next 4 years too? Or are you going to actually, instead of running headlines like, first question at Trump press conference is pro-Trump. Oh, really? Well, it's a 50-50 nation, twits. Well, you flip a coin, heads, tails. Occasionally, tails gets to ask a question. Why is it news? There's a 50-50 chance. There ought to be a 50-50 chance. Apparently, the 50-50 chance of it being a pro-Obama or pro-Trump question, pro-Trump, anti-Trump question, apparently that's so bizarre to the Associated Press that they make it a headline. That's the bubble you're in, losers. That's the bubble you're in. Mark Steyn for Rush will take more of your calls straight ahead.